A quiet but undeniable transformation is rippling through Europe. It's not loud, it's not abrupt, but it is significant. Nation by nation, countries that were once deeply anchored to the ideals and promises of the European Union are beginning to glance in a new direction. That direction leads eastward and southward, toward BRICS, a coalition of emerging economies that, step by step, is reshaping the contours of global influence. What began as a loose economic bloc among Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa is evolving into something far more consequential, a potential counterweight to the dominant institutions of the West. And increasingly Europe is taking notice. Among the countries signaling this shift, few stand out as starkly as Turkey. A nation of deep historical currents and complex geography, Turkey sits at the intersection of continents, cultures, and power structures. It is both European and Asian, both secular and Islamic, both Western-aligned and fiercely independent. But today, more than ever, it is asserting a new kind of identity, one that looks beyond its decades-long, often frustrating relationship with the European Union. Turkey is now openly expressing its intent to join BRICS. This is not a simple economic maneuver. It is a statement, a pivot, a strategic recalibration. For decades, Turkey pursued EU membership with determination. It reformed its economy, adjusted its laws, and aligned with many European standards. Yet membership always seemed just out of reach. Promises were made, negotiations dragged on, and enlargement fatigue set in. What Ankara received in return was often delay, skepticism, and political conditionality. The message was clear: you can get close, but not too close. Now, with global power structures shifting and new economic centers of gravity emerging, Turkey is broadening its horizons. BRICS, in this moment, represents more than just another international group. It's a platform to amplify its global relevance without being subjected to the bureaucratic and political strings that often define Western alliances. But to truly understand this shift, one must first grasp what BRICS is, and what it is not. Many in the West mistakenly conflate BRICS with NATO, but this comparison falls flat. NATO is a military alliance born from Cold War paranoia, structured around defense, deterrence, and collective security. BRICS, on the other hand, is rooted in economics and development. It is a platform for cooperation among non-Western powers, designed to foster trade, investment, and new financial alternatives outside the orbit of the US dollar and institutions like the IMF or World Bank. And yet, as global tensions rise and traditional power balances are tested, BRICS is taking on a more strategic role, becoming not just an economic network, but a symbol of sovereignty, independence, and multipolarity. Turkey's interest in BRICS isn't an abrupt detour. It's the culmination of years of geopolitical frustration. The EU, once seen as Turkey's inevitable destination, now appears to many in Ankara as an uncertain and perhaps unattainable dream. In contrast, BRICS offers something that Western institutions rarely do: partnership without preconditions. Flexibility. A seat at the table, not just as a junior partner, but as a voice with weight. Geopolitically, Turkey holds enormous value. It controls key maritime trade routes, connects Europe to the Middle East and Central Asia, and plays a pivotal role in global energy corridors. This makes it a strategic prize for any alliance. President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan has been clear. He sees BRICS as a vehicle not just for trade but for asserting Turkey's independence in a world no longer dominated by one hegemonic power. His government wants to shape global norms, not simply follow them. Importantly, this isn't about severing ties with Europe. Turkey's trade with the EU remains extensive, exceeding $200 billion annually. But what is changing is Turkey's posture: less dependent, more diversified, and increasingly unwilling to play by someone else's rules. It is hedging its bets in a volatile world, seeking new partners that don't condition economic cooperation on political realignment or ideological conformity. This trend is not unique to Turkey. Serbia, another European country long in line for EU membership, is now openly questioning whether the wait is worth it. Since being granted candidate status in 2012, Serbia has made significant efforts to align with European standards. But the path to membership has been slow, uncertain, and often humiliating. The biggest sticking point remains Kosovo. The EU insists that Serbia recognize Kosovo's independence as a precondition for further progress, a demand that cuts to the very core of Serbia's national identity and sovereignty. For Belgrade, this is not a negotiable issue, and in that space of resistance, BRICS has emerged as an appealing alternative. Serbia's leadership has grown increasingly vocal in its criticism of the EU. Vice Prime Minister Aleksandar Vulin has lambasted the bloc for what he sees as endless requirements and minimal results. He's pointed out that Russia, unlike Brussels, has never forced Serbia to choose between East and West, never pressured it to abandon historical allies or adopt policies that contradict its values. That kind of strategic autonomy is what BRICS offers. A multipolar arena where countries can engage in robust economic collaboration without surrendering their political sovereignty. Serbia is now expected to attend the next BRICS summit. It's not yet a member, but its interest is clear, and it is far from alone. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, and Argentina have all either joined or are in the process of deepening their engagement with BRICS. The bloc is growing, not just in size but in influence. What was once dismissed as a symbolic grouping of rising powers is now being taken seriously as a true alternative to the institutions that have dominated global governance for decades. For countries like Turkey and Serbia, the appeal of BRICS lies not just in the economic promise, but in the political philosophy that underpins it. Where the EU and other Western institutions often condition engagement on internal reforms, value alignment, or concessions, BRICS emphasizes mutual respect, national sovereignty, and economic pragmatism. It does not ask countries to change who they are in order to participate. That difference is profound, and it's gaining traction. Serbia's potential shift toward BRICS would mark a strategic realignment, one that goes beyond trade and investment. It would be a signal that the global order is truly changing, that the appeal of the Western-centric model is no longer universal. BRICS, unlike the EU, does not impose strict political criteria or demand structural overhauls as a condition of cooperation. For many countries, that is not a compromise, it's a relief. And the timing is critical. The international economic landscape is evolving rapidly. Traditional Western economies are slowing down, while growth is accelerating in Asia, Latin America, and parts of Africa. These regions are becoming the engines of global commerce, and BRICS gives countries a direct line into these markets. For Serbia, this means new trade opportunities, diversified export destinations, and investment from a broader and more dynamic pool of partners. It means strengthening its economic position by tapping into emerging global trends rather than waiting for stalled processes to resume in Brussels. Another key advantage of BRICS is its challenge to Western financial dominance. Institutions like the IMF and World Bank, headquartered in Washington, D.C., have long set the terms for global development finance. But their loans often come with heavy strings attached: fiscal austerity, governance reforms, and policies that may not align with the specific needs or desires of borrowing countries. BRICS, through efforts like the new Development Bank, is offering alternative financing models, ones that are less prescriptive and more respectful of national context. Ultimately, what we are witnessing is the rise of a new paradigm in global affairs. It is not about replacing the West, but about rebalancing the world. For countries like Turkey and Serbia, BRICS offers a way to participate in shaping that balance. It's a path toward economic growth, political autonomy, and greater geopolitical influence, without having to constantly prove themselves to a club that may never fully accept them. As traditional alliances strain under the weight of their own contradictions, BRICS presents itself not just as a coalition, but as a vision of multipolarity, of partnership without hierarchy, of cooperation without coercion. For an increasing number of nations, especially those caught in the waiting room of Western integration, it may be the future. BRICS, a coalition originally formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is steadily working to reduce its dependence on Western-dominated financial systems by establishing its own institutional frameworks. Through the creation of mechanisms such as the new Development Bank, NDB, and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, CRA, BRICS is not merely offering alternatives to institutions like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. It is building the financial foundation for a new kind of global economic cooperation. These institutions are designed to be more responsive, flexible, and aligned with the specific needs of developing and emerging economies, providing a space where member nations can seek support without the political and structural conditions typically imposed by Western creditors. For a country like Serbia, which has long been navigating the complex terrain between East and West, this shift presents an opportunity to pursue its economic development more freely, unencumbered by the constraints that often accompany EU alignment or Western financial assistance. It opens the door to a more self-reliant and adaptable economic model that can be tailored to national priorities rather than external demands. This movement toward independence from Western systems is not occurring in isolation. It is part of a broader, coordinated effort by BRICS countries to reshape the global economic architecture into something more balanced, more equitable, and more multipolar. Each of the founding BRICS nations brings to the table significant economic weight, regional influence, and a shared desire to challenge the dominance of the existing Western-led order. What unites them is not a common ideology, but a collective interest in constructing a global system where no single country or bloc, particularly the United States or the European Union, holds disproportionate power. For countries like Serbia, which have historically been caught in the geopolitical tug-of-war between competing powers, this vision offers an appealing alternative. A global stage where smaller nations can assert their interests more confidently and align with a coalition that promotes sovereignty, mutual respect, and non-interference. As BRICS looks to expand its membership to include countries such as Turkey and Serbia, its geopolitical footprint is poised to grow dramatically. This expansion represents more than just a numerical increase. It signals the transformation of BRICS into a broader and more inclusive coalition that extends beyond economic coordination into the realm of strategic global influence. Its growing clout is expected to manifest not only in trade and finance, but also in political and security domains. With each new member, BRICS gains additional leverage to challenge existing global institutions and rewrite the rules of international engagement. The entry of countries like Serbia would bring with it new regional perspectives, unique strategic interests, and fresh opportunities for cooperation, further solidifying BRICS as a platform for emerging powers to shape the global agenda. This evolving reality presents a clear contrast to the European Union, which has long positioned itself as the premier model of regional integration and economic partnership. For decades, EU membership has been viewed as the ultimate goal for countries in the Balkans and Eastern Europe, offering the promise of prosperity, stability, and political legitimacy. Yet, the process of accession has often proven slow, rigid, and politically fraught. Serbia's EU integration journey has been marked by delays, shifting benchmarks, and ongoing political friction, particularly around issues such as rule of law, media freedom, and relations with Kosovo. The uncertainty of EU membership, combined with what many perceive as an inflexible and often patronizing approach from Brussels, has left space for alternative partnerships to gain traction. BRICS, by contrast, presents itself not as a club of conditions but as a coalition of equals, an appealing proposition for nations weary of meeting external political demands in exchange for economic opportunity. As the appeal of BRICS rises, the EU finds itself at risk of losing its influence in regions once firmly within its sphere. The traditional EU strategy of offering long-term membership prospects in exchange for sweeping domestic reforms may no longer be enough to maintain enthusiasm among aspirant countries. To remain relevant, the EU may need to fundamentally rethink its approach, relaxing its political conditions, modernizing its accession process, and offering more immediate and tangible benefits to potential members. Otherwise, it risks ceding strategic ground to a coalition that is rapidly gaining in both economic and political appeal. The BRICS coalition's growing influence is not just a reflection of institutional development. It is also the result of strategic leadership, particularly from Russia under President Vladimir Putin. Putin has played a central role in articulating and advancing the BRICS vision of a multipolar world order. His leadership has been instrumental in both expanding the group's institutional reach and deepening its strategic ambitions. Russia's vast natural resources, military capabilities, and geopolitical leverage have positioned it as a linchpin within BRICS, and Putin has used this position to push for greater financial independence from the West. The establishment of the under his influence has been part of a larger project to insulate member states from Western sanctions, financial shocks, and conditional aid, key components of Russia's long-term strategy to create a more resilient global order. In addition to economic instruments, Putin has also championed greater military and security cooperation among BRICS nations. This includes proposals for joint military exercises, enhanced intelligence sharing, and the development of a collective security framework that would offer an alternative to NATO and other Western-led security structures. While such ambitions remain in their early stages, they reflect a clear intent to expand BRICS beyond the economic domain into a more comprehensive geopolitical alliance. Moreover, Putin's advocacy for expanding BRICS membership to include countries like Turkey and Serbia underscores his belief that the coalition must grow both in size and diversity to effectively counterbalance Western influence. This expansion is not simply about numbers. It's about creating a coalition with enough strategic depth and geographic breadth to become a formidable actor on the world stage. As BRICS continues to evolve and solidify its presence in global affairs, the implications for countries like Serbia are profound. Joining such a coalition offers the chance to be part of a transformative moment in international relations, one in which emerging powers assert their place, not as junior partners to the West, but as architects of a new global system. Serbia's potential involvement in BRICS could catalyze new economic partnerships, open access to alternative sources of development financing, and provide a platform for regional leadership within the broader Eurasian space. Politically, it would signal a shift away from the EU-centric narrative that has dominated Serbian foreign policy for the past 2 decades, allowing for a more diversified and independent international stance. In the grander scheme, the growing interest in BRICS, especially from countries like Serbia and Turkey, is emblematic of a larger shift in the global power structure. This expansion is not merely about economic cooperation. It is a declaration of the rising influence of non-Western powers and a clear challenge to the legacy institutions that have long governed global affairs. With Vladimir Putin continuing to shape the coalition's direction, and with the strategic interests of its member states increasingly aligned, BRICS is poised to become a central force in global governance. For countries navigating a world in transition, BRICS offers a compelling vision of partnership based on mutual respect, strategic autonomy, and shared ambition. As the group grows in scope and influence, its role in shaping the future of international politics and economics will become impossible to ignore, making it one of the most consequential coalitions of the 21st century.